So, welcome and bienvenue. Another weekly hack night, NeurotechX. So, just a quick introduction for those first time here. NeurotechX is an international community that facilitates the advancement of neurotechnology. Our pillars are community, education, and innovation. And we have chapters worldwide, lots of meetups. Hopefully we'll be back in person next year. And lots of, at over 4,000, we got to update the slide, over 4,000 community members. So there are local chapters in your community, as well as student clubs, our Slack online, educational platform, and sign up for our newsletter. Okay, so and I will.
What you just said was incoherent for me.
Oh, did that not sound good?
I just couldn't. It was like jumbled. I don't know if it was me or if it was you.
Oh,
did anyone else hear that?
Yeah.
So maybe it was me.
No. Do tell me these things. I'm hoping my internet is. I'm gonna downgrade my. But good to know. And yeah, this time just wanted to give a chance for anybody joining us, especially for first time, chance to introduce themselves, though there is no pressure. Okay. Oh, sorry, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Steve Miller. I live in Pacifica. Moved out here a long time ago to work at UCSF with Mike Merznick. Did a variety of startups, and they're all alive. They're not all doing well, but they're all alive. I've built software programs and some things with EEG that work with individuals with special needs, as well as worked with pro athletes the last couple of years, and trying to build normative databases around elite performers using an EEG database, and had some military contracts. And in January, the company that was doing that decided they were going to stop doing athletes in military. And so we're out trying to start it up on our own.
That's awesome. I mean, I'd love to ask follow-ups, but I don't want to pressure people when they've joined us to to present more. But great to have you, and certainly very, very familiar with some of your work. So it would be, yeah, hopefully we will talk more.
And people can contact me online. I have Slack and a variety of other tools. If people want to jot me a note, ask me a question, feel free.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So Suhas was on and talked about some of the brain training with like Brain HQ EEG work. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, I didn't. I knew he was going to do it. I'm glad to hear that that it happened. So then you guys know already. I work with Suhas. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So let me just pull up some of the. So yeah, for this week, I've got some things on coming up on HBM is next week, and we'll get to that. And what was the other? And of course, the Paris Hack Night was terrific. We had Jean Rintoul, who's, I call a San Franciscan, even though she's Australian, but I met her in Adam Gazzali's lab. And here's my daughter.
We were stuck, but you didn't hear us. You didn't help us.
So I'm just talking right now. Okay. Apparently I'm in trouble. I'm not sure. Yeah, Jean joined us Paris on Monday, where she's started her PhD at Imperial, but she developed like last year, I think, was when her Spectra kit from OpenEIT project that she started for electrical impedance tomography. I've got some of the kit here, and sorry, I can hear my kids, so I'm assuming everybody else can. Yeah, try to ignore that. It was great. I mean, if you haven't, so we didn't record Monday's meeting. I mean, Monday with Jean. At the time, not everybody had joined, and her time was pretty pressed. She has several videos online at NeurotechX's YouTube, as well as her presentations previously at DEF CON and Chaos Computing. Great talks, really interesting. The kit is, a small channel count EIT system that you can use. I'm gonna pull out briefly here some of the tech, but I don't actually see myself here.
I was about to ask, are you showing your video?
Oh, am I not showing my video?
You're just a pulsating M for me. Sorry.
Oh dear. Okay.
There you are.
There I am. Pulsating M. This is the kit in terms of, you'd fill this usually with some water and then some material, and you've got the channels down here, around the ring, and you can treat it as, a 2D EIT problem. But again, like, this is enough of a kit to be demonstrating the utility of impedance tomography, or basically injecting electricity in and recording to figure out properties of the material, and also image where those boundaries are in terms of changes in the conductivity. And this is now, so she's currently selling this, and I think we're going to see this in some other venues. I should check whether that's publicly announced yet. But I think it's like OpenBCI, which is already reselling the Hedgeduino from Josh, and sorry, I don't know why they have to shout, but it's dinner time, so they're moving downstairs. It's great. I mean, I really love the fact that OpenBCI is taking up some of these other projects. And on that note, if Josh is with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about what you've been doing with Dimitri?
Sure.
Yep.
So Dimitri's working on the free EEG 32, which is it's a 32 channel EEG. It's really like a general purpose, like 32 channel board, but I mean, so it's going to be good for EEG. And he's been working on it for like 4 years, multiple prototypes. Now he's in beta, and he keeps innovating on it to death, but he's at a point where he wants to, well, he's been convinced more like to pause and try to get some of these into the wild. So I offered to just help him get the crowdfunding thing going, because he said he doesn't really have much gumption for it. And so I talked to Crowd Supply, and they've greenlit it. So now we're going to organize getting a crowdfunding going with Crowd Supply. And what we're targeting is $150 a board for the 4-channel EEGs. That'll probably be like no frills, and then I'm looking right now into options for providing electrodes and everything else to go with it. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I've just dropped a couple links in, and you've just ordered another board, right?
What do you mean?
Have you received that board from Seed?
No.
No. But
I've ordered my own like 8-channel like version of like just a single ADS 7771.
gotcha.
Board. That's my own project. While I'm just working out all the details for these free EEGs for Dimitri.
Sure.
So what I'm probably gonna do is we've got like a bunch of different sources that we've talked to in terms of getting this stuff manufactured. So I'm probably gonna go with PCBWay because I know they're reliable, and so I'm gonna order like a test one, and as long as that's all good, then as soon as the crowdfunding gets going, then we'll be able to order a ton of them. It should be good. Dimitri's built several of these, so we know they're working, and he's able to measure like gamma on it. He's not sure how good of the gamma is, but it's low enough noise that it's showing something.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, I would love to see. Can,
I was just suggesting maybe we could have a channel dedicated to crowd funding initiatives, just since I always find them exciting to learn more about. But you know, if there's a way that can be added in, that would be great.
yeah, and that was what I wanted to bring up too. I mean, in the sense that I would love this. I mean, Dimitri is really looking for help on this project, and
right. It's like the whole point of this project is to drop the cost of these boards so that like other scientists can get a hold of these things now. And you know, we're all pretty broke. And I mean, he's literally, you know, it's a 32 channel EEG board and it's $150. And you know, if you want to manufacture it yourself, you can get it even less. And it's cool. It's all open. All the plans are, you know, it's free. So the point is to support open discourse and global initiatives of science.
So you got this approved to be a crowd supply project, right? And you know, so that's kind of I mean, that's a first step. You know, Dimitri has, as you said, he's been working on this for a really long time. He's previously been hand soldering all the boards
and etching. I mean, pretty crazy. He was still thinking about doing that when I started talking.
I know. And Dimitri, you know, is Dimitri on with us? so Dimitri does sometimes join us, you know, from Moscow. But you know, and it was because the board is so awesome and is using, you know, really high quality parts. That is why Bernard was so interested in it, right? And certainly was pushing him to move to a fabrication service. There's still an issue with the DC controllers, right? I mean, you're still adding a couple parts to the board.
Well, no, it's. I mean, all Dimitri's been. I mean, what he's got now is like pretty damn. It's better than what I could do. But he's trying to move into from a monopolar to a bipolar supply. So he's just trying to get like every, you know, nanovolt of resolution out that he can. But right now, as far as everything I've gathered, it's like stable, and like he's stacked these up to 128 channels, and then they're getting enough, like I said, to measure. They're like 4 or 5 microvolt signals
Yeah.
to the range.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, like Dimitri is really interested in other people kind of taking this on, and is not so much interested in making money from this himself.
Not at all.
But you know, what he's really interested in is the, you know, seeing the technology used such that people start working on some of the applications that he's interested in, which is mostly focused on working memory augmentation. So this is, I mean, it's different focus than Bernard's work. So Bernard's definitely selling, you know, his equipment for meditation. You know, people practicing meditation as a tool to give themselves feedback on their practice. Anyway, what that means is that like this is a great project for other people to work on, because he's got you know, I've posted the links, you know, he's got Gerber files, you know, BOM, everything you need. I think he's still, you still need to flash these devices.
Yeah, they'll still have to be flashed.
Yeah.
We'll probably do an option where it's just like at cost, and then you know, whoever gets them will have to flash it themselves, and then we'll probably have another option where I'll put the headers and the software on there and make sure it's all working and good to go.
Yeah, and so that will take some testing with some acquisition software too, right?
Right. Dimitri's using OpenVibe, and I know how to write some software pretty easily. So we've got that figured out.
Okay.
I'm pushing Dimitri just to put more, just like a better command line interface on the device itself, so that, you know, it's just more.
Sure.
More
Well,
flexible.
sure. I mean, OpenVibe, yeah. I mean, it's great. MNE CPP would be another option. As well. Yeah.
I'm the exact opposite of a professional here, so whatever suggestions I can get. And this is a community thing. You know, I'm just doing this because I really like Dimitri, and
Yeah.
everything he talks about is pretty radical. So
Yeah.
need more people like him. And
Yeah. So I mean, this is a project that people could be contributing to, and certainly one of the, you know, so AJ at Neuroscience already said that he'll buy one board, and we've got a couple other people who are interested. And if Andre Parfenoff would be a great person to get a board too. In the, you know, that this board could be supported by BrainFlow, and that would also give us, you know, the EEG notebooks as a way to use this device.
Right. So this one will be, I'm not sure if it, I need to double check some of the stuff. It might have Bluetooth on it, but as far as I know, it's just a serial interface. So, you know, wired, it's probably going to be wired software for now.
Yeah.
Dimitri's working on his new board. It'll be like a Linux board. That's what he's working on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be probably not this version though.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, well, I mean, I put you in touch with Andre, the other Andre, in terms of like, I'd love to see what we need to combine 4 of those boards together to make a 128 system.
Right.
And yeah, so that
it shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah,
Just need to be on multiple serial streams.
Okay.
It's mostly dependent on how lazy the software developer is.
Yeah. Well, again, that's why I think it would be awesome to get a board for Andre. But I mean, it sounded to me like Dimitri's wanted to. Well, I think this is Bernard's, and what you've both said is that if you ask Dimitri, it's always put off for a couple months and let him improve something. But yeah. So when do you think you'll be putting in an order for more boards?
Well, it's going to depend on the crowdfunding. So.
Okay. I mean, so no more betas or alphas.
Well,
needed.
so what we are going to be funding is Dimitri's beta board, because it's like a complete thing. It's just, it doesn't have the bipolar power supply that he wants, or the Linux, and he also wants to get Wi-Fi on there. But that's fine. Like, this thing is already like, I mean, it's a dynamite little acquisition device. So it'll be good enough to do pretty good EEG work, and he's gonna keep working on his version to add the, you know, all the bells and whistles of our modern hardware.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I wanted to bring that up because, I mean, if maybe we can also get OpenBCI. I mean, if OpenBCI is interested in OpenEIT, hopefully they'll see the benefits of this newer board, and maybe even would consider contributing to it, because they've obviously
I already talked to them about this. I mean, not directly about free EEG, because I was talking about my own projects, but yeah, they're definitely all open to this. What they do, at least what they told me they do, is they basically just fund other people. They just buy other people's open hardware, and that's their business.
Yeah, I mean, and there's enough. I mean, there's enough great work that is looking for support. Like we've said, like Dimitri's not really interested in making that the business. He wants to work on other things, but
he wants a whole like distributed cloud brain, thing like Elon Musk.
Yeah. Well, and for those who aren't already following his Facebook group, there's a lot to learn. There's a steady stream of good papers, and but it would be, I mean, I would love to see us and working with you to get things a little bit more fleshed out, such that OpenBCI would be interested in this board for themselves, or reselling it, because they could use an upgrade. Most recently, when somebody was asking, could they use a 32 channel cap with the OpenBCI, and it was like, no. I don't think they're against it if, like you said, like if there's a good project, they would hopefully be interested. Sorry, Micah, did you want to say something?
Would you mention Dimitri's Facebook group? I wanted to check it out.
Sorry, you kind of came in garbled.
Would you mention Dimitri's Facebook group? I wanted to check it out.
Oh, it's BCI. I will find it. Just one sec. And did I mean, I don't know if you saw this, Josh, but OpenBCI has got a hardware position available.
Yeah, right. Give me another year or two,
Okay. I think it's brain computer interface, MRI, MEG, EEG. He's covering a lot of bases.
MRI series. Hey, what was that MRI thing you sent me? It wasn't like a giant magnet. It was like all these little I don't even know what they were. They're just like electronics sticking off someone's head.
Well, I'm afraid with me you're gonna have to be a little bit more specific. So I think I shared where we because we had been talking about ultrasound and trying to put together. So after Luc Janvaux joined us in the Paris meetup with his open source ultrasound project, I think I shared the full waveform inversion paper from Imperial, which has got a crazy helmet.
What's that one? No, this was a long time ago, actually. This is like one of the first papers you sent me.
So yeah, so there's good examples of crazy helmets with NIRS, as well as certainly Matthew Brooks has a new paper on optically pumped magnetometers. So, and that's the MEG device that that looks very, it looks like a helmet. It looks like a very fixed helmet, and sometimes it's got that kind of like hockey mask. Did it have like a face mask as well?
No, it was all these green, like long PCBs sticking off of like it was just like a white bike helmet, kind of like
Yeah.
Kyle's setup. But
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's here. Let me just get so Matthew Brooks has some of the first OPMs. Okay, they're calling him Matt Brooks. So
we read about OCT scanning.
Sorry,
Someone else.
give me 1 second. I've got that paper.
Yeah, I've been reading about OCT scanning a lot lately. That's
OCT, yeah.
That's like, wow. Applied quantum physics for sure, cool stuff.
Here's the most recent thing from this is the most recent thing from Matt Brooks, and this is the MEG with what I think we can all agree is a pretty crazy helmet. And so the benefit with the MEGs is that you don't have issues with the skull, and typically they're much higher chance, because you also don't have to deal with the skull, the scalp attaching the electrodes, right? Because it works more like a big at least when it's super cooled, it acts like a really big like hair dryer kind of helmet, and so putting it on, so to speak, or getting the sensors close to the skull is super fast, and that people use very dense array of sensors, right? So this is one way you can really push source localization, right? And so a lot of the OPM buzz is that now the helmet doesn't weigh like 3 tons and need to be super cooled. And so they talk about it as almost like you can move in with this, but you can't move. It's still, so the helmets with OPMs are still very, that's why they are so rigid, is that they still need to, they're still making very sensitive measurements, and so you really don't want any movement. But I believe they're a lot more. Again, it's somewhat scary. Like, for some reason, the MEG manufacturers would still have the device come down on you, and so you can be seated while you're getting recorded, but it's very disconcerting when you've got like a couple tons above you and it's coming down until it rests on your head, and you're like, okay, stop. Yeah, it is much, I prefer to do it resting. I mean, there's actually two reasons. So most of the manufacturers also allow you to swivel the unit down and allow you to record while the patient's lying down or subject's lying down. And the big reason for that is that when this comes down and it touches your head, right? Like, now you've got to stay there for, say, an hour during the task. And, when you're nervous about there being 2 tons above you, you stay pretty rigid, but then, like, once you've had, a good half an hour of really boring cognitive neuroscience tasks, you start to slouch down, and so any movement, because the sensors aren't attached to your head, one of the kind of like signal corrections that you do with MEG is actually trying to capture how your head moved relative to the sensors. And so typically you're attaching some markers to the head to kind of capture a couple of degrees of your movement freedom relative to the sensors, and then try and correct that in some way. Anyway, OPMs, the benefit is that, like, OPMs being these, a bit more like having fibers attached to your head with NIRS, is like they can be attached, and so when you move, the sensors move with you, which is a real benefit. But the easier thing to do is just have the person lying down and then their heads, resting on the sensors. But it's also a tough thing with the MEG, in the sense that you don't try and make a helmet that fits the person's head. But with OPMs, you can, basically make a rigid frame that's like 3D printed for that person. So it's another super benefit. I'd love to know, I don't think, has Andre joined us? I don't know if Andre is on. Let me check on. So Andre's PhD was related to OPMs, and let me just. So I'm wondering if there's, are there real, the pricing of these devices, because they're made for, they definitely had like military applications early on, and I want to say they were used for like atomic clocks or something. Anyway, it's this company Q-Spin from Colorado that makes them. And yes, NIRS is near. Oh, sorry. Did somebody ask? Oh, true. Yeah, John, jump in and ask questions. It was great last week.
Yeah, I guess based on a quick Google, it looks like OPMs are optically pumped
magnetometers.
Magnetometers, yeah. So it looks like it's rather involved, but yeah, I guess how, or like, I guess to put it simply, how does it work, and how does it work differently than the predecessor?
Well, I mean, the big difference. So I'm going to punt on the how it works to allow Andre to come and teach us all. I believe it's something to do with like lasers and a particular gas, and getting something from that measurement. But the main thing being that the device changes from being, a set of like fibers that you can, somewhat flexibly attach to this rigid helmet, from this much, larger device that you had to use liquid helium to cool, and the squids, the superconducting quantum interference devices that were the sensors in the previous system required like a lot of maintenance. They're super heavy, and they required depending on the manufacturer, they required shielded rooms. They all require shielded rooms, and like the OPMs, at least a couple of years ago, still had some serious noise problems that were just very different. So the fins, I forget what there's a new center in Finland that is the merger of like three universities in Helsinki. So one of them being the Helsinki University of Technology, and I forget the other two, but I think they're called like Aalto now. The Finns were always like Hut had some of the earliest MEG systems, and it definitely had some of the earliest OPMs, and the really interesting, like the frequency profile of the sensors is just very different. And it's not so much like one's better, or at least at the time it was like, we're sensitive to different frequencies with these different sensors. But the main benefit being the different size and weight and maintenance costs. And I guess the other big thing was, or what I'm hoping is like, was it $500,000 5 years ago, and is it now like $100,000? And are there components of this that are we're really benefiting from from other industries push, right? So, and I'm kind of willing to believe that optical science and some other things that, again, Andre could tell us more about, are pushing some of the expensive components of this to give us potentially like cheaper sensors, cheaper MEG sensors. That would be awesome. But unless anybody knows someone who's got these 20 years ago, when UCSF was buying MEG sensor, an MEG system, and the chair of radiology was asking like, this costs as much as an MRI, and we can't charge people to use the MEG, whereas in his words, an MRI prints money, which is. Yeah. Okay. Well, so yeah. So kernel, is that what they're calling flux, John? So kernel is, so as people know, kernel made some big announcements a couple of years ago about developing something, brain interface technology, and their recent announcement, like a month or so ago, was two systems that they were so making neuroscience as a service available, in that it seemed like, and again, I haven't received any new details from their blog posts, but it seemed like kernel had built themselves an OPM system and a time domain nears system. And yeah, and some of the nice thing being that, well, again, it would be great to have more details, so everything I'm saying is speculative, but it was certainly great to see kernel and Facebook putting money into some of the practical issues of fiber management and kind of like headgear, as well as probably as easily as possible, because again, like none of them seem to be getting into the hardware game, so none of them have a real vested interest to push the technology fundamentally. But potentially we're getting some additional cost savings from the fact that they're both dealing with these fiber optical systems. So if people aren't following that, NEARS, there's the conference that'll be coming up in October, which I still doubt will be in person at this point. But this will be the first conference I've seen that Facebook is a platinum sponsor, or Facebook Reality Labs, or some division is doing that. And I'm not clear, as far as I can tell, their Facebook is not necessarily doing time domain NEARS, but I'd be happy to be corrected. And the people, well, I guess Kyle's not on. Anyway, so John, keep asking questions, or yeah, I'll say. That doesn't mean you have to ask them right now, but please stop me. Let me just check if anything else in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be respectful of, like, there's like the elementary level of questions, and then there's like the practitioner level of questions. And, I want to make sure that I'm not like imposing myself asking, kindergarten questions that I think are important to ask, even if you know what you're doing in a field, but I not knowing at all what I'm doing.
I super appreciate it. This is really rare equipment. Like I think right now you could maybe say there's 5 OPM sites. I mean, maybe it's up at 10 at this point, but it's less than probably double digits. So this is not equipment that is widely distributed and used, and time domain NEARS is neither. Or Abby, you might be the NEARS expert currently in the room.
Oh no.
But I mean, since Kyle's not here, I wouldn't say that time domain NEARS is widely used at all.
Yeah, I would not say that is the leading scenario for it.
Yeah,
It doesn't have great temporal resolution with what I've looked at.
But it's different than Eros. Or I mean, not to put you on the spot about Graton's lab in Illinois, which is not where you are.
Yeah, my experience with that lab specifically is I read their website last week, and that's about as I've gone.
Good. So hopefully, yeah, we'll bother Kyle when he joins us later, hopefully. But no, it's great. And
what does the time domain and time domain NEARS refer to?
I don't have it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Strong.
And we're hopefully gonna have some experts on diffuse optical tomography come and talk and tell us more about getting that kind of information from the multi-channel. So to be continued. So I wanted to take some time today to, I try and keep us on topics of neurotech and associated research, but I thought it was particularly important currently to talk about diversity and trying to be a more inclusive community currently. And so we had yesterday shut down STEM and shut down academia, and there was so I can talk about what I've been trying to do in terms of my reading and my education. But what I wanted to, and so I'll do that for a second, but I certainly wanted to talk about, like, what should we be doing? Sometimes I certainly think that because we're open to anybody, right? That, like, of course we're inclusive, right? Like our door is always open, and and I've seen, so we're not academia, and we're not we don't have the problem. You don't have to pass a test to join this group. You don't have to, don't have to deal with some of the more difficult inequalities that exist in the society. But I would hope that, or I think it's very likely that there's still ways that we could be doing more, and in particular, that like, what are the challenges of open source development? Well, you need to ask Mama. Okay. Yeah. So certainly, like one thing that has always been a problem of tech meetups in particular is a gender imbalance, or lack of representation. And thank you for being here. And yeah, and that in itself should already be enough of a problem that we should be talking about. I remember when Alex.
Yes.
Okay, but Mama needs to put that on. Okay.
You. I want you.
I know. Not right now.
You.
Okay. Once.
Yeah, that's reminds me that we also don't exactly always have a good age diversity either. It's not as bad as some of the other diversity problems that tech groups have. Like, I know being around Noise Bridge and the physical neurotech hack nights, there's definitely been issues with diversity and making a place feel as accessible as possible. And I think having digital meetups like this can definitely help quite a bit with starting to get more diversity than try to get people to come in person once all this stuff changes, because people, there's still an issue of a digital wall that is very different than a physical interaction wall that inhibits people from engaging in meetups like this. Like, but diversity always brings a better, like, knowledge base, a better logic base. It makes everything better. I remember taking a neurotech class where half of our class, actually, this was a undergrad, like, fun class. Half our class already had PhDs in the field, but just wanted to check up on stuff. And the amount of diversity having other really high level people, it made all of the younger people in it just feel that much more engaged. It made me feel amazing being someone under 30 talking to these people in their 60s who've been in the industry for 40 years, giving me the tools to advance in the subject, and also having different perspectives. Like, one of our nanotech students, his specialty was ceramics. He actually ended up doing a study report on how there are certain paints that actually exhibit quantum mechanics based on their color, that makes them literally embed themselves in the atomic structure of most materials. And he would just start looking this up because he wanted a better glaze. And I think similar things can happen in neurotech if we get the diversity of as many different disciplines, including outside of traditional neurotech. Things like gaming. I'd love to see more neurotech related to how people experience taste and food, and why do people enjoy things. And I think some of those things could be given a lot of perspective from a much more diverse set of knowledge bases, as well as people of different culture sets, different races, different gender identities, like people who have a different experience in their life than the people who are traditionally at either academia or at the meetups of most groups.
Well, and that would definitely be one of my questions in terms of, you know, what should be the kind of the action items from in addition to educating ourselves and being uncomfortable for a bit, what are the steps that we, should we be doing outreach? Because, I see in that intro, we have as pillars our community and diverse and dynamic community. How are we getting that diverse community? It's not, it's definitely, yeah, just that. Like what should be some of the things that we do? But I don't want to jump away from, yeah, go ahead, Micah.
I was saying, I wondered if it has to do with the marketing and the unconscious signals that people are receiving from the marketing, and maybe inspiration for what messaging to use and what colors to use come from looking at other types of marketing have part of the success you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, Steve.
Make sure my microphone's on.
Yeah.
So I did some stuff for Sally Ride. So for those of you who don't know, Sally was America's first female astronaut in space. In California, I think every third or fourth grader has to do a Sally Ride little project. What we did, we got funding for it, but we would go to a school. Stanford did it, Cal did it, and they bring bus loads of kids from underserved communities to come on campus, and they do a workshop. They pick 3 workshops, and they have a postdoc or a graduate student who hopefully isn't the dean of the department, but somebody who can talk about an activity that introduces it so that they can say, this college is cool. I sat in a room and talked to somebody who seemed connected and cared what I did. I did a project. They got a lunch, then they got back on their school bus and they left. And we did about 40, maybe 42 or 43 of those. You cap it at 600, and about 1,200, they're still begging to bring more kids. So there's no lack of interest in doing it, but you have to commit, and when you think about it, you got to have, you're going to put 20 kids in a room. If you bring in 1,000 kids, you got to have a lot of rooms with somebody in them doing, hydro balls or some sort of experience for the kids where they can walk around and do it. And you can cover costs doing that, but it's a couple weeks of dedicated resource time. If you want to do that, there's a cookbook to do those things. But those outreach efforts are always extremely well received, and the companies that want to fund them are like Google, Chevron funds Exxon. I hate to put it this way, anybody who has a refinery nearby will fund you to educate them about science and technology in those local communities in case something goes wrong. That could even be one of the local vineyards where their wine spilled into the river a few weeks ago. Right. So they want to do outreach. And so you can look at doing that. There's a huge appetite for it. It's, a full school day for kids, and you basically take over a campus and you co-sponsor it. The resources provided by the university, you handle the logistics.
Sure.
So,
Abby?
Thank you. Firstly, I'm really glad you brought this up. I think this is a really interesting conversation for us to have, and especially with everything going on, I think it's a really good idea and a really relevant thing. I really like what, Steve, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I really like what Steve just mentioned about that. We actually do that we did that at Queen's when I was there. And what they did is they had all of the nearby schools just come into the university itself. So not even sending people out. And they actually just brought in us who were running student clubs on campus. And they just had us all volunteer a full day of time and come in and run these events for kids. So I was in a room with my co-head who is also a female, and we were the only double female leadership team, which was kind of nice. And each, in like our pairs, we all ran a day's activity for 20 kids on whatever club we were running. So because I was with the NeurotechX student club, we just did basic muse experiments. But each of us had 20 kids, and all the school had to do was bus them in. And so that could be something that people kind of shepherd forwards, because it barely cost them anything. And it was a whole day of activities. We had like 1,000 kids total or something like that.
Sure, sure. I mean, I guess one of the things that I was wondering is, because we're not a school, like a school has a kind of obligation to the community, and I guess I'm wondering, as a volunteer group like we are, and semi kind of like a special interest group, right? It was like a bunch of people are interested in neurotech, and some of us might be researchers, but this isn't. It's not it's not our job. At the same time, like, we talk about being a diverse group, we certainly want to be inclusive, and what I mean, so we could make those opportunities happen. I mean, I not to necessarily put John on the spot, but I mean, I'd love to hear more about the high school projects that he did do, and certainly here in San Francisco, because this is one of those things where it's just like, I feel like the things you're talking about are related to things we could do in our physical community, right? So there's a group called Mission Bit here in San Francisco that goes in to try and teach in the community. Are you familiar with them, Ryan?
Yeah, little bit. It's been a while, but I know a couple people at Noisebridge have talked with them, and like something we used to have is Circuit Hacking Monday would actually start. Our old teacher would bring in classes from around the Bay Area into Noisebridge for about 4 hours and do a Circuit Hacking Monday class where kids learned how to solder and make little LED light thingies.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it would be a bit more expensive to try to have everyone make their own EEG headset. So someday I'd love that. Like, hey, today in honors like neuroscience in high school, let's build an EEG headset. You can use this for whatever you want. Like, I think something we could probably do at some point is see about having a couple of these video meetups, like have another one that is for kids or for like pretty much do kind of what Reddit AMAs are, where it's just like ask us anything, like ask neurotech people any questions. And I think that could be a lot of fun. I thought about doing that at Noisebridge for virtual reality a number of times, and it's why I do my really long, in-depth discussions about virtual reality and extended reality tech, is so that younger people can start to get interested in more sides of the coin other than just VR gaming. Like, virtual reality has so much more potential. Same with neuroscience and neurotechnology. It has so many uses, and I don't think too much of it is at the start all that complicated compared to some math and science stuff. Like, I legitimately think late elementary, early to middle school would be a good target age, partly because at a event called Hack the Future, which I've helped out once or twice, which is hosted by some of the original developers of the internet, web, computer stuff. I've helped teach elementary and middle schoolers how to program their own games, and kids love it. I'd love to see Hack the Future have a like EG or Neurotech section in the future, because that would be really cool. Hey, Alex. Cool. Yeah, like this is the person who introduced me to Hack the Future. I think you're muted. Yeah, I'm done.
Yes,
Cool.
speaking of what you're describing, so when I founded Hack the Future, there were no 3D printers there. Northbridge had exactly one MakerBot, and I had never been trying to use the MakerBot for more than like 20 minutes. But I knew the bare essentials of how to get the MakerBot turned on, and how to print. I made a companion cube. That was the sum of my 3D printing knowledge. But I made sure that I lugged that MakerBot to the first Hack the Future, because I knew someone there would know more than I did and would teach it for me, and I would have to worry about that part. I just had to get the equipment onto the for the kids and the teachers and the mentors to find uses for it. And I did. It's been one of our most popular sections, the busiest sections ever since, is the fabricating and 3D printing and SketchUp modeling and all of that stuff. So if we get brain hacking stuff to the next Hack the Future, it will get used, especially if Ryan and other people from this group are participants and will help mentor it. So I would love that to happen.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So right now we're also trying to talk about how do we get. I mean, are there barriers for kind of like walking in the door at Noisebridge or walking in the door to an open NeurotechX meetup that we're not that we're not helping with in terms of that inclusivity and increasing our diversity?
I'll explain like the Noisebridge problem, which I actually have analyzed later. There's other questions first. I can explain in detail how diversity works and doesn't work at Noisebridge, but I'll wait a bit to tell that.
I mean, certainly.
I just started Discord.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's great. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, so I'm gonna put these things down, and you know, one of the, again, like kind of my question to Abby's point is like, you know, like a school has some equipment that they can take somewhere, you know, like at this point, like we've literally only got the stuff that we've kind of donated, which is, yeah. And although, but some of it's really cool, right? Like I know only a few of us have actually met in person, but you know, we've got some equipment that we could use, and we could do something like you're talking about, Alex, right? I guess one of the things that I want to say, or you know, we can have come out of this is, what can I say to Yannick and you know, others, in terms of like NeurotechX has made, you know, a very public commitment of support for diversity and for outreach. What are we doing? You know, like what are we actually doing to make that happen? And like, you know, we have, as a, you know, chapter leads, we have like a certain number of meetings and events that we're supposed to do a year. Should some of those be focused on this particular kind of outreach? And sorry, Abby. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just hop in with a little bit of an overview? Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion kind of around events can do specifically with kids, and I agree that that's a great place to start. For example, I specifically did not even consider engineering until my grade 10 teacher pulled me over and specifically suggested it. And I don't know if that's like a societal implication of me being a girl or what the scenario around that was, but I went to an all-girls school, so I don't even really know how that all formatted, but I definitely think that being in that environment plus that direct pull aside made an effect there. So I definitely think that pursuing something with those kids and inspiring people on a more individual level will definitely help in the long term. But I also really agree with Morgan's implications of what are we doing right now to help, right? There's a whole bunch of systemic issues right now. Like even earlier today, I'm not sure if you guys have been following the whole shutdown STEM movement on Twitter. I've been all over Twitter basically all day, every day for a couple weeks now. And even one of the posts I learned today was there's only 2 Black women ever that have graduated from U Chicago with a PhD. So it's not even that it's just an issue of, yeah, it's not even like, there's been a lot of discussion about how do we present this topic to the general public and how do we engage those that are uneducated in this and get general people talking about this in the mainstream. But it's not even just that. It's how do we empower people in academia? Like for all of those people on this call that have labs or are associated with labs, make sure that you're hiring women as well as men. Make sure that you're hiring people of color as well as just white people in order to ensure that diversity specifically in academia. And through that, it can generally extend further. Like between all of the neuro calls I've ever been on, I think I've only seen a handful of women max in total. So, and that's not even getting into people of color of any sort. So it's definitely a bigger issue than just how can we kind of bring kids into it. It's how can we empower people right now and bring them into this call and bring them into academia and give them papers and things like that.
Yeah. And
Could we do an active search to find people?
Say again?
So like, okay, basically in any field like this, like let's say when it comes to like speakers at conferences, right? So for a while there was an imbalance where most conferences had like 90% male speakers, and it was just because people tend to invite people to speak at conferences who they know. And so it's a network effect where whatever the person is, the people they know, it's going to be mostly dudes who know dudes who know dudes who know dudes. It's like dude all the way down, right? And so people just said, well, let's just like look and see what speakers are out there that we don't already know. And then they found them, and then they started to get balance. So if we want to have stuff for outreach, and we want to have people who are good representatives of diverse perspectives, then could we do a bit of finding candidates and inviting them to be those ambassadors?
Definitely.
basically.
I think that's a great idea to kind of try and kick that off. Like even for me specifically, I actually knew about this call, but I never came on it until Yannick specifically texted me saying, come on this right now.
Yeah.
Like 4 months ago when I first came on, and that was my first introduction. And if I didn't have that one-on-one invitation, I probably would never have come on.
Yeah.
I mean, my first experience with Neurotech was hosted by Marion, so I just assumed there were lots of women at all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, and that was exactly what I said at the Moab, the first Moab, group call, and I think there was almost like 25, 30 people, but it was all guys, and so when Miriam asked me to talk about it, I was just like, well, one thing is like, thank God you run San Francisco's group, because at least you're adding that as the face of NeurotechX in San Francisco. I was, Alex, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we had a really diverse group in our one physical meetup this year.
Yeah.
But it was, I want to say it was half women and one, three people of color.
Right.
I mean,
It was good.
But I wonder, so what are the actions? Like more invitations, more.
I think these are connected.
Yeah.
The connection is that whatever the percentage is in the field now, whatever search you do to try to find those exemplars that exist out of the percentage that exists now, the on-ramp is what's going to change that proportion in the future. And so the on-ramp is the education stuff. So the two go together, right? Like particular groups of people that we don't see represented, and how do people get into the field? Like what's the intro material? What could we show kids? Those two go together. Because if we go to Hack the Future is roughly 50% girls, I think, right? So, once you have classes where everyone's getting exposed to it in equal numbers, I think it takes care of itself. So if we could identify the best intro, I'm just Googling for like intro to Neurotech and trying to see what comes up. But like, I'll give an example. Minecraft, which I know is a little bit towards boys, but still it's very popular with kids. Minecraft modding is one of the most popular things at Hack the Future because all the kids play Minecraft, and so they just want to make mods, and they learn Java to write mods. So they're using Java. It's legit programming. It's just applied to something that they know and they care about. So if we found a way to make a module for Minecraft, or someone already made one that just hooks EEGs up to Minecraft, then they're sold. We don't like. They're just like, how do I use it? Okay, what's the Python interface? What's the Java interface? And they're motivated because they can make the sword that when you concentrate really hard, it glows with fire or something,
Yeah.
So there's got to be some low-hanging fruit activities like plugging it into Minecraft, where all the magic is already there. We're just like plugging the hardware device into something they already like. Does that make sense?
No, I think it does. I mean, I think we've got those demos, and I think the action items should be things like we need to specifically have events that are going to communities, underserved communities, and invitations to people who are not represented, and so Ryan first, and then John. Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
Thanks. One example I've seen actually at GDC last year, Game Developers Conference, was that I specialize in the education and virtual reality tracks. In the education track, has been for the past couple of years focused on diversity, and it is definitely about both getting to underserved communities, but also making sure that at least a portion of the people teaching it are either from those communities or are someone that those kids can identify with, like on a very deep level. Like the main speaker at the Unity Education Summit last year, all 4 of the 5 of them were women, and 3 of them were of color, and one of them actually teaches middle school game development at one of the most like underserved like schools in San Francisco, and I invited her to Noise Bridge a couple of times, and like we've talked a bit about how like it's very important for students to have someone they can identify with, like even though like you can identify and feel associated with anyone, but there is a thing about like psychological and like a wall that is currently because of the way that people are brought up, that race is still a wall, gender, all types orientations are still a wall. So bringing those people forward for the youth of those groups is very important. And but also trying to get them involved in meetups like this where they can give us the information they need. A while back at Noise Bridge, I brought a friend of mine who's a woman of color. Like she had never been. Within 30 seconds walking around, she was like, I'm the only woman here. I'm the only person of color. And then we tried to start a conversation about the diversity issue and how places like Noise Bridge have a big problem, which is people don't feel safe visiting some of these places. Most of the people who come to Noise Bridge come at night. Most of the time, it's in the Mission, so it doesn't feel as safe of a place. Things like that, and I tried getting in that conversation, and then the only other female person there for that day, we all started conversation, but very quickly the person of color felt left out and ended up leaving. I talked with her later, and like there is still a lot of problems with like in-person things. Like if they happen late at night or in a neighborhood that people don't feel comfortable in, that's a big problem. And there are certain things that help, like after the event, if it ends late at night, people should offer each other rides home. Like I constantly have driven home people from events. I mean, for any of you who know me, you probably have been chauffeured by me around the Bay Area multiple times to events and stuff. And from what I've talked with other people, that's something that makes them feel more comfortable. If they don't have to feel uncomfortable getting to or going home from an event, that will more quickly allow them to get interested in going to events. So there's a lot of problems, but there are a lot of solutions as well.
Sure. Jonathan.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to sort of like look back around to the like individual encouragement and sort of mentorship, right? I guess it seems to me like with any kind of I mean any kind of community that you want to bring people into, like once you've done some kind of outreach with them, having like one-on-one personal connections with people they trust, like Morgan, you've done this with me, like you like have been like very supportive of me like engaging with the group here, just like the last 2 meetings, and then encouraged me on like other sort of avenues like Facebook and so on. So I think like if you're reaching out to communities that you want to like bring in to this group, it seems to me like with the people that say like if you're reaching out to kids, like their teachers, the like the sort of mentor figures at their schools, coaches, what have you, if you have them follow back up with the students after your outreach program, and people who are running the outreach program like reach out and talk with kids individually and continue to encourage them, then I think you might have like better retention than otherwise.
I mean, it's I mean, these are all good things in terms of like I would like to have better retention of everybody who walks in through the door. Like at least when we were doing in person meetups, it was very common that you'd never you wouldn't see that person, like I so I definitely want to improve our kind of conversion of people into regular attendees. Definitely have down that need to make the invitations, because like currently I am inviting lots of people. Like, what am I doing to ensure that there's some diversity in that? And certainly Twitter has been good at collecting a whole bunch of names, like certainly at least in my kind of sub fields of science, they're like we need to have good lists. But I want to keep going around. Mayank.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the high school thing just because I am in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that one of the issues with that is that a lot of high school students don't actually know about neurotechnology. Like, I can confidently say that I'm one of maybe 2 or 3 people in my school that even know what it is. Like, when I told some of my friends about some of my projects, like they kind of didn't believe me till I showed them. So I think one of those things is to like maybe even just have if you have any events where you demo the technology, just like reach out to schools, or like even have like maybe NeurotechX, I guess, high school ambassadors, because a lot of high school kids they love being part of ambassador programs or anything community related just because it looks good on university applications. So you will have a lot of people that want to do it, but I think regardless of why they're doing it, you'll get a lot of outreach into high schools. I think people will get more awareness of the fact that this technology exists.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, that's great, and we should. And again, like some of this is I'm putting together a list, and to talk with other people at NeurotechX that are organizing meetings and say like we've put out this statement of support. What are our action items, and we need to include doing things that we're not currently doing, and yeah. So I mean, high school is something that we have kind of talked about, or certainly, again, like John had some experience in terms of trying to take neurotech into high schools. I wouldn't want to limit us though. Like maybe we need to be going to State University and other places where there are, plenty of people who just might not think that this is something that they might have the same feeling, Mayank, in terms of like they've never heard of NeurotechX, or certainly nobody's come to them to say like, yeah, this is something that you could do too, right?
Yeah.
So, and
NeurotechX was really, really helpful for me to learn about neurotechnology. The community was really valuable.
great. I mean, and so, I think I'm going to let John speak in just a sec, but I think it is too. Or like I think that we've got a community that we could share with a lot of other people. Or I certainly see how it could be useful to other labs and other groups. Yeah. So I lost my thought. But John, please, yeah, raise your hand.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm on my mobile because
okay.
it wasn't jamming with my laptop. Yeah, so you're asking about kind of our experiences with the NeuroBright in the high schools, and this actually came up when we had a discussion on the shutdown STEM thing the other day as well. As in like outreach is one of the things that we feel like we could try and concretely work on. But just to kind of share a few experiences. So we did this program. It was running for 2 years. It was funded by a grant. I mean, it's funded in the sense that the grant bought some used devices. That was it. Otherwise, it was run on people's volunteer time, like postdocs and grad students and a few PIs. Going into high schools in Toronto, 3 high schools, and they had like a term on science project, and we were doing something that, yeah, it was quite creative for them, in that we were getting them to design an experiment and run an experiment and try and do science, like come up with hypotheses and test them and so on. Now, and this comes back to the thing I was putting in the chat just now, the comments, like it's extremely time intensive, and it was basically like prohibitively time intensive to do the thing the way we did it. Now, we went in with not like a particularly well-developed plan, I guess you might say. I mean, we had a plan, but the details like definitely got fleshed out along the way. And the kind of main point is that having some, if you're going to do like an ambitious thing like we did, which was a term-long project, and we tried to have some curriculum in there, then having the curriculum content, as a resource, like a community resource that we have that we can use and repurpose, like that would be extremely useful for people who are trying to do these things, and it not be like more than a day of work a week for the people who are doing it, which is that's not necessarily possible for most people probably, and so that's one thing. There's lots of things that can be done around that, but that I would say, just in terms of the the process, like content, and there are kind of practicalities around this. Like we kind of cottoned onto the fact eventually that you can allow for a certain kind of amount of creativity and experimental design, but you have these like multiple constraints. So if you want to allow for that, you want to allow for the kids to come up with their own ideas, but you also want them to get decent results. You don't want them to be just staring at noise.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, we were looking at Wiggles on ERPs, and we got to do posters and present these things at a little mini conference thing. We were offering kind of generous interpretations of extremely noisy data, and it was like just on really like as far as you could really allow yourself to go as a scientist to say like, yeah, I think your your kind of ERP inflection there, 700 milliseconds might mean this, and so the constraints there were kind of, you want to allow quality, but you want to allow creativity. And so having, like, for example, a very specific context. So for example, we settled on mainly visual presentation, evoke potential experiments. And we could have done more constraining around that. And, it didn't need to be just that. But when you have like a kind of delimited set of parameters of where the creativity can be done, that's quite helpful to help with like the quality, and also just the the feasibility of actually being able to support all of the stuff that people want to do. If you have like 20 groups doing something completely different, then it's hard. So
Sure.
so resources, and then briefly the other thing that definitely is relevant here is like the way that you engage with the schools and how that relates to their basically like the quality of the schools and the areas they're in. The bottom line is like it's easier, like better schools have better science departments and teachers who who make it easier for you to work with them. And it's, at least that was essentially the experience that we had, and
Yeah.
Maya kind of represents that as well.
Yeah.
So that's like an extra step you need to go, I think, is really kind of looking farther afield. In our context, it'd be like looking at the outskirts of the city rather than like downtown Toronto, for example. So that's like a next level of like, you need the demographics of the area, so you need to do your background research on where you're targeting. If you just say, who's at a school in Toronto who wants to do this, then a lot of people are going to put their hands up, and they're all going to be like doing all right already on these type of things.
I mean,
so far, anyway.
Sure. I mean, I'm very, so as an undergrad, I was developmental psych, and trying to work with schools, and and not all the schools were interested in working with me. Like now they so I mean, I think it's important to consider the practical applications. Like, I mean, we could say we're interested in putting on a workshop, but this could be a lot of time just to find organizers to get kids together and to host places. Like there could be a lot of non-technical stuff involved in making this happen. And yeah, I mean, and
yeah, there really is. There's like relationships with schools, and that's, I didn't have to deal with that personally, but I know that was a large pre-existing, people knew. Yeah, so it's not just like having a science project or having some EEG, but knowing what you want to tell people. Like there's layers.
I mean, so again, like some of my, or what I thought was like relevant for this group was, I mean, these are all things that we could be doing, but also just, is there anything else as an open group that anybody can join? Like, what can we be doing to make that to make that more diverse and inclusive? Outside of organizing events, how about these events that we're doing now? And part of that is certainly I've tried to focus on reading 2 books, the How to Be an Anti-Racist and White Fragility, and the White Fragility one obviously was the harder one, or the more cutting one, but big part of that was like, like, of course you don't think there's anything like you're doing wrong. And yeah, so, we're not going to solve it today, or, like, I didn't want it to be like 1 hour, we get some action items and then move on. But I would love to, come back to this at some point. I'd love to know what else you're, reading. Certainly one of the things, like I think everybody, Abby, is on Twitter these days as we're all locked in. But I've seen some people that I have a lot of respect for in the open software community say, like, what should we be doing in open software development? That we're not doing now, right? And that it's a super, like, proactive. Certainly, what I've read and understood so far in really short amount of time of putting in some work, is that that there's more work I need to be doing to be anti-racist, as opposed to pretending like there is no problem, right? And so anyway, yeah, more thoughts. Ryan or anybody?
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, go ahead.
Abby's been on hold for a while, so she had her hand up first. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm happy to respond. Thanks. Yeah, like you, Morgan, I've just been reading for weeks straight now, trying to gain bearings in this whole scenario and be able to recognize my inherent privilege and entitlement a little bit more. Obviously, like you, I also still have a long way to go still, because reading a couple weeks of reading articles and listening to podcasts is nowhere near equal enough. And so I definitely think it's important to try and figure out what we can do going forwards and kind of revisit it regularly in order to continue that. But I was struck by something that Ryan said before, where a big way of focusing, bringing in more people, like he speculated that a lot of women did not come to that event because it was in a scary neighborhood or because it was late at night. Whereas something that struck me was, if a woman was helping plan that, that never would have happened. That would have come up well before the event. Because just the second you said that, I was like, yeah, obviously I wouldn't have done that. It was just like my automatic thought process. So it's not only recognizing the issues and thinking about it from another perspective, but it's also empowering the people that will have that other perspective in the first place. So that way you've taken care of the issue before it's even presented. So even though I thought of that as a obviously thing from a female perspective, I would never really expect a man to think of that, because it's not something that they'd have to be concerned about or worried about. In the same way that there's a ton of things that I would never consider an obviously point that everyone of color would. And so it's just a good reminder that in order to even have those, oh yeah, like good consideration to bring in people of that type, or of that minority, you need to have that person kind of in the room making the decisions in order for it to even be accounted. And it's good that everyone's trying to grow and be able to subconsciously think about it from every perspective, but it's also just not reasonable that we're going to be able to cover all the different perspectives. And I also think another thing that I had bouncing on my mind from a previous comment was that although it's really important to be teaching all these kids and to be trying setting up events, I kind of agree with you, Morgan, that we should be focusing on how to bring people into the current events that we have. How do we reach people of color? How do we reach more women in order to bring them into these conversations and bring them into these calls that we have once a week? Why am I the only girl that ever calls in? Why is there very few people of color? Like, why are we all white? For the most part. and how can we directly overcome that, and what can we tangibly do while in quarantine for the indefinite future to try and bypass that, rather than just planning events for post-quarantine or at some time in the future.
Yeah. Can Alex jump in first, Brian? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to what you just said, a couple other people's things that they said so far. So you were just talking about what we could do to actively find some folks, and some thoughts come to mind. For example, Ryan and I know someone named Vicky, and Vicky is doing some ideating of projects that involve kind of cognitive tools and things. I don't want to tell about her projects. It's a secret project at this moment, but like I know women who would be interested in this. So the other thing is we could invite some of the other Hack the Future folks to come and think about this from the perspective of how to incorporate it into Hack the Future with us. And I know that there's, just here in the Bay Area, there's an incubator in Oakland that specializes in being a super inclusive incubator with like a scholarship program to let people, not incubator, it's a boot camp, sorry. So it's like an inclusive scholarship-based boot camp where anyone who wants to learn to code and do tech stuff can. So it seems like what we could do actively would be to invite some people who are representatives of communities where they know lots more people like them, and they could start to represent and relay to those communities, or tell us what the perspectives are from those communities' perspectives. Like, what would it take for this to be a viable path for someone in the boot camp to do a project based on, right? Because it might be that right now, if one of their students said, oh, I want to use brainwaves, they'd be like, whoa, we don't teach that stuff. Just do a web app, right? Get out of the town, right? Hold the phone. So what we want to do, ideally, for anyone in, let's say, a boot camp or a teaching kids thing, or whatever the thing may be, is if you've said we already have the demo projects, then we need to frame and provide a teaching resource to help someone who wants to deliver those demo projects. If we can expand on the demo project to something more like an incubator / not incubator, but bootcamp length project, then we could work with people that run boot camps to turn it into a part of a bootcamp curriculum, so they could do their final project or one of their projects as a EEG or Neurotech connected project.
Mm-hmm. Well, something I was definitely struck by. I think Ryan was saying, like, we need to train the trainers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's where we would best put our time, and make sure that the people who are doing the mentoring are people of the community, people of color, and other underrepresented groups. And yeah. Ryan, sorry, Alex.
One last thing I wanted to say is something I really agreed with, and that was I posted about it in chat so I could remember. Jonathan said something, which was that if someone comes to a group and they don't meet anybody that they really connect with, and they feel like an outsider, they'll probably never come back. And the reason that people hang out at hackerspaces is because it's like, if you go to a hackerspace for the first time, roll 1d4, and that's how many friends you make. And if you go to a hackerspace that you've already been to before, it's roll 1d4, and that's how many old friends or new friends you make, right? So I have a suggestion, which is whatever the group project format that we come up with to recommend to educators or to boot camps or whatever it might be, it should have a group element, which is optional but strongly recommended, and a mentor element, which is optional but strongly recommended. So in other words, you could do this project on your own, but if there's a way to recommend that two people or more work on it together, and you could do it without a guide, but if there's a way to connect you with some guide who is your mentor for the project to help you with questions when you get stuck, then you leave the event and you're still working on a project with a peer who's your equal, who you don't feel intimidated by, who you can like be dumb and like have like beginner awkwardness with, but you have also the expert to role model for you and help you. If you get those two things, like a peer that you can talk to about it and a mentor that you can aspire to learn from, then the project is sticky and you're going to come back with the finished project at the next meeting instead of like, oh, I was intimidated or nobody talked to me.
Yeah.
The military has a thing called the buddy system, right? Where you like always have a buddy with you. And that's because if you like step on a landmine, they need someone to tell them that you died. It's kind of grim, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, just exactly what Alex was saying was what I was suggesting, that there's sort of this gap between people that already know the tools, the programming, the languages, how to get everything up and running, and then people that come to these meetings and they're very interested, but they don't know, and it would take 30, 40 hours to get familiar. And if we could give them a project and give them some kind of mentor type, someone that's familiar that can help them with all the problems they encounter, and then a collaborator that is also helping them do that. And then finally, and I think this is the tricky part, if the project can actually be relevant, actually be of interest rather than a simple demonstration, if we can get these components there, I think it would be incredible.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, I want to. There's a couple of things that that I want us to also cover tonight. So let me, let's consider this to be a topic we're going to come back to. Certainly, I think one of the biggest things is saying to NeurotechX Central. How are we building this into our mission, in the sense that we talk about being, I talk about being, I need to use I words. I talk about being a volunteer of this group, but I'm asking for that on very much like my own terms. Like sure, if you show up and you ask questions, I'll answer them. That is not enough, or and one of the ways we can change that is just saying no, what being a volunteer and really making a contribution to society would be stepping out of my comfort zone and putting in work that is kind of less selfishly, I don't know, comes back to me in some, I don't have the exact words for that, but not just that that I'm providing this service if you come here, but more outreach. And I don't know enough about why everybody is talking about outreachy. But I don't know if so I'm gonna learn more about what they tried to do in terms of being an internship program that has this built into their mission. And anyway, I would also super appreciate more links, more resources, and to hold us all to talking about this more. And it would be really easy for this is one of the things that we have as being a part of this larger community, is that we totally have the resources to make this happen. Right? Much more than we have individually. And it should be as part of our mission to now go find people who don't have that and try and help them have that too. Then like someone said, train the trainers so that they can be that's certainly one of the things I love about software carpentry. Is software carpentry seems to be like an organization where you train to the point that you can train others, and you kind of you're done when you're now able to teach it yourself, right? And I would love that to be, yeah. Anyway, that's another group that I think capture that very well, as well as the some of the I mean, I think there are some really great open science communities that try and embody this really well, that we could learn from. And that seems like the biggest, the kind of the best overlap for us. Like, we're not academia. People aren't sending us, applications and resumes. But there's still more that we could do. Anyway, on that, anybody who's got, I don't want to cut off the conversation. So any final points, and then I'm just going to get what our next.
Can we talk about this more later on tonight? Like, I know some people will have to leave, but I am happy to stay after the meeting ends and keep talking about this for however long people want, because this is one of those subjects that I care a lot about, and I also am someone who will never shut up if given the chance. So yeah, I'll save any of my comments for after the next section of stuff. Thank you though for bringing up this topic. It's very important.
I want to just wrap up by saying that a good goal would be to produce an hour of code module, which could go on the Hour of Code website, which would be an hour of neurotech code. And whatever the tech it involves, whatever the format, maybe all the neurotech signals are simulated, or maybe it uses a webcam to sort of infer emotions using one of the face tracking algorithms, because everyone has a webcam on their laptop. But if we can provide a 1 hour module that introduces neurotech as a first-time programmer's experience with coding, then everything, we could go beyond that, but that's a great starting point.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Alex.
I'm going to run because it's getting a little late here, but I'm hoping that we can continue this conversation later, and that maybe we'll talk about it last week. I think this was a really good starting point for everyone.
Awesome. Check the links on the agenda. I don't know if you use the Meetup. I think a lot of people join and like tell me. I mean, I should do. How many people who don't use Meetup actually see if there's a message on Slack about the? See everybody just assume that this is on?
Yeah, I see messages on Slack, I guess, but
yeah, if the link doesn't work, then I check Slack, I guess.
Okay. So yeah, just and the reason I say that, Abby, is that I was just kind of assuming that people don't actually see this, but I would love to post things so that even if people can't stay for the entire time, because 3 hours is crazy long. There's some, I try and include some links that I think are really important. So one is the next week is OHBM's hackathon. And there's a really good, the way they're managing it is that everybody proposes, a kind of project on GitHub. And so it's a GitHub issue. And so let me just put this, I'll post this somewhere else, but I thought it was something that as NeurotechX group, that was a particular issue that we could all kind of get around, even though, of course, I'm talking to the one person who worked on FNIRS, but anyway.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you very much.
But I'll post more of these particular links in Slack because I don't think everybody's treating the meetup as an agenda. Okay.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you next week.
See you. So like I was saying, 15th and 16th. No, actually, I think it's even longer. But next week is the hackathon for the annual human brain mapping meeting. So it's definitely kind of a research, focused conference. But the hackathon was definitely like kind of a outgrowth of BrainHack, and is still, I think, the best discussion boards for that at least our messages aren't lost. So this particular, I wanted to see what people thought in terms of, let me just remember, it's Johannes, I believe, or yes, Johannes Algermissen, who's at the Donders and is, so he's got some he's talking about some recent papers that, so one recent paper that people talk about as the NARPS project was this, massive group analysis of data with every kind of processing pipeline combination run. And well, it was multiple groups processing the same data, but they ended up with so many different pipelines, and they, of course, from that they got somewhat different results. And so some of that paper is kind of getting at the, like, we should have better, like, people should know what the right processing is. I'm not sure that's the only takeaway message from that paper, but certainly what he's talking about is thinking about analysis pipelines for EEG, MEG. And, in some ways you could, it's not the main focus of the MOAB paper project. So MOAB, and sorry to pick you out, Jonathan, but since yeah, did we talk about MOAB last week? No. So it's the mother of all brain computer interface benchmarks, and it's a Python package that you can install, and then you can run, and it'll go out and grab multiple publicly available data sets from different places, right? So, and the reason for that is that, one, there is no central repository for publicly available EEG data, as there is for fMRI data, or certainly, like, there is now some places like openneuro.org that are really great repositories of, I think Open Neuro at this point, I think, has several thousand subjects worth of fMRI data.
Why is that the case? That is why isn't there such a repository? Is it just because it's like in an infancy stage of its development? Is it because of legal issues, or?
So great question. Again, super glad you're here. Because I would have just glossed right over that, right? So EEG, much older technology, right? So in many ways, you could say, like, why wasn't that the case in the 80s? And certainly one of the reasons you have to first point out is, like, that didn't exist before because we didn't have the internet, right? So that was a super profound change, right? And but that's also the reason why I don't have to photocopy journal articles anymore, right? like there's a whole bunch of reasons I love the internet.
I guess, to put it another way, is it commonplace for for there to be these repositories for other methods?
Well, so
or is it hit or miss, or
if you asked like cognitive neuroscience people, like fMRI definitely changed things, and certainly like the open science culture. I mean, John or anybody wants to jump in, like, I would say, this. Oh, I see John did chime in. Cool. So like open science around fMRI data was definitely, I mean, I could give you my guesses of why that happened, but it's hard to explain in the sense that like fMRI is easier to interpret than EEG, right? It's with the MRI that's associated with the fMRI, like I can make out your face, right? So we actually have to run a defacing algorithm so that when we share the structural data, I can't reconstruct the face and figure out whose data this is, right? EEG, pretty easy to anonymize if you just don't have the subject name in the header, right? And yeah, so John's making some good points. Like PhysioNet is definitely one that's been around. So I was there, I was like very early on trying to package PhysioNet tools. I mean, it was still there. It wasn't a central repository. It wasn't a repository like, it wasn't a repository like the geneticists share, sequencing data, right? Like there wasn't something I perhaps like built into the funding, the grant support and things like that, where it was just like, you were obviously going to want to share this data to make it useful, or, anyway, everything that we're saying about like, well, the fMRI people did it. Like why, the EEG people really don't have a reason, because they had a lot more data earlier than the fMRI people, right? And so again, I don't know if it was I don't know if it was something about the culture, like again, like there wasn't that sharing. It just wasn't built in, and so I know that Scott McCaig is working with working with Russ Poldrack, who's the, what was Open fMRI became Open Neuro, and Open Neuro now has some additional non-fMRI data sets, right? So that's why they're Open Neuro and not just Open fMRI. And Scott McCaig's a very long time EEG researcher, and so hopefully we'll see that happen, right? But Moab was a really cool project because there were these data sets, one in New York, one in Berlin, Wadsworth made some data available. PhysioNet hosts some of the BCI EEG data sets, and Moab gave you a kind of like a common framework to download those all, and then it was basically like, now you can run and compare the results of different classifiers, because the theme of all those data sets was they were focused on motor imagery. So like move your hand, or just imagine moving your hand, right? And then, were you able to detect as well as, rest, and so are you able to detect when the person's, just imagining moving their hand, right? And so Moab has historically kind of focused on spatial filter and discriminant analysis, but what we could build in is some of these, like, what is the best pre-processing? So what are the artifact rejection, the filtering, the baseline corrections. Anyway, I thought that this particular issue was like kind of as close as possible to NeurotechX's mission. There's some papers that he lists here, and I'm going to just share. So So what we got here? So, okay. So I see lots of people. So Sarang Dalal used to be at UCSF. So together with the MEG Center at UCSF, he's the Nutmeg developer, which is like adding on MEG source analysis. Alexander Gramfort is the original MNE Python developer. So this is like a comparison of all source localization. Yeah, you got Robert Oostenwald. That's the field trip. John Mosier was one of the original Brainstorm developers, along with Sylvain and Vladimir Litvaks at the Phil. Anyway, that's one of the references. I wasn't thinking they were all going to be source localization. Okay. Well, here this is another good one. So this is UCSD people that might be good to look at. So yeah, typically, or certainly a lot of people use ICA or independent component analysis to clean up EEG. And
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I've looked at people using surface Laplacian as a transform cleanup method.
Yeah.
And I saw a paper where they took a word recognition example with 64 EEGs.
Yeah.
They were able to do an increase in accuracy of word recognition of what word the person was thinking of from something like, 55% accuracy to like 70, 85% accuracy just by cleaning up with surface Laplacian.
Yeah.
And the data was that good from 64 EEGs.
Sure.
And the follow-up that I have is that I'm interested in buying a headset. I've had a bunch of the consumer headsets before. I've played with, I had a Muse and I had an Emotive. I don't know what happened to those. I think I lost them. So would you recommend Open BCI's headsets that are on the Open BCI website for $399, or what do you think is the best headset to work with?
Well, so it's tough to say. I mean, Open BCI is great as a open platform, right? And it is important to know, like, how much do you want to play with the hardware, and how much do you want to play with the classification, right? Because there, you can spend more on the hardware, at like 700, and you can get a very complete. I mean, you can get a very polished hardware device that I mean, you go for Neurosity, which I think is out of the reduced price. I think it's 1,000 now. I'm very willing to be corrected, but where you get multiple channels and you've got onboard, you got onboard processing. You don't even need the PC attached.
So it'll record data to its own memory?
It will. You can also, I believe, stream that data. I know you can stream it LSL. And
that's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a particularly polished one. And AJ and Alex, I mean, have been, I mean, I know AJ worked for OpenBCI. Like, they've been big parts of the open source community related to neurotech. That's definitely trying to be an all-in-one device. It's limited in terms of where you can put the sensors, right? So it's a very fixed form factor, and but looks great. There are other devices that are more like the Muse in the sense of, like, you see devices like the Muse that focus on the forehead just because you don't have any hair issues, and but you know, if you, it's kind of, it can help to know your application. Like you know, people who are like Bernard, who's working on the free EEG hardware design. You know, he's working with people focused on, you know, trying to get better practice with their meditation, right? So some frontal, he doesn't even, I think he's only trying to build a 2-channel system or something like that. Like
So my application is teaching. So
gotcha.
kind of like, you know, like I'm still really new to this EEG stuff. I've participated in the Neurotech meetup that I researched a long time ago, where we mostly studied AI research papers.
Sure.
And you know, I haven't really done, like, I've heard the EEG and the emotive APIs and stuff, but I'm still new. So I'm basically just like any potential student when I want to teach, right? Like, I'm curious, I'm keen. So I want to know, what is the most versatile hardware that we could take back to the future, or hack the future? And maybe Ryan knows that we already have some equipment and we could just take that. Do you know, Ryan?
Well, I know what's at Noisebridge.
Yeah, that's the stuff that would make the most sense. And also, one thing though to think about is there a walled garden for their data or low level access? That's where things like Brainduino or OpenBCI make a lot of sense, because you can integrate that with a lot of different things. Like, something I want to mention later is one of my friends is working on a XR, like, low level API for connecting sensors and all sorts of stuff together, and getting it able to work with UI in extended reality applications, and then pass that into Unity or other things. And he's developing it for Linux, but now that there is a Linux kernel on Windows, it opens up a massive amount of usability for connecting things like sensors to AR, VR, XR, like different sorts of adaptive controllers. Like, one group I've been planning to work with is the Microsoft adaptive controller team, because they really want more people to develop ways of allowing people who are disabled to play games. And right now, one of the subjects they have the least experience in is getting EEG, EMG, different sorts of biosensors to use as controllers. Like, people might not always be able to move a part of their body, but they can still, like, flex it. Picture using EMG on, like, your forearm to press a button type situations, stuff like that. I'll post the XR toolkit that my friend is developing, but yeah, I know Noisebridge has some gear, but it would really be good to get enough gear that multiple people at an event can use it, and then also see what steps we need to take to make sure people have an easy time interfacing with it. But that's right now, like, one problem I consistently see, especially if you want to integrate multiple sensors. Bluetooth clock syncing is not easy.
Well, I definitely, like, this is one of the reasons that we have a meetup of people asking questions about this. I want to just check one thing. Hey, John Griffiths, did you want to talk about a particular project at the hackathon that you'd be interested in getting interest in, or is that something that you're not ready to share?
Well, no, it's not like formulated, but
Yeah.
it's like I'm kind of a I've been to a lot of the HBM hackathons, and like
Yeah.
I like the events. I kind of know the people, and so I'm definitely going to be attending, and
Sure.
I'm kind of like choosing what to do.
Sure.
And I just so happen to be doing a lot of work on EEG notebook stuff at the moment, so it kind of like it makes sense. So I said like I'm not 100% sure that there's something specifically suitable. So that's why I said I kind of like I'm definitely thinking about it, but
Sure.
I don't know yet if it'll make the cut this time next week. It really depends on like time and the thing.
Sure. But we could follow up on the EEG data channel on Slack in terms of if people have suggestions, or like where would the conversation be, could take place before next week.
Wherever you like, basically.
Okay. Or we could also, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I thought that this particular, I'll post the links, Alex. I thought this guy, this was the one project that seemed somewhat, neurotech-ish, NeurotechX-ish. Yeah.
So which one?
Oh, so if in the chat, it's this, it's the GitHub OHBM Hackathon 2020.
Yeah, but which project? You said one of the projects that's listed.
Oh no, like that's the specific one. It's what's he call it? It's he calls it mapping the parameter space in EEG MEG analyses.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
And I mean that's
I'll take a close look at it.
And I certainly thought like some of the, he might be looking at some of the, automated analysis pipeline stuff that, or certainly, things that we could be linking into Moab and looking at, processing differences as well as, spatial filter. And although it looks like, I mean, the fact that he's got all this beamforming stuff, like they're doing, he cares about, projection into source space as well as just, changing filters and, ICA and things like that. Anyway.
So I just found an LSL for Unity and an LSL for Sharp library.
Yeah.
So the project that I'm working on, the empathy test project, which is sort of runner void conf test inspired. I was originally using just face tracking because that's, I have a webcam. That's the only sensor I've got. But I'll take a crack at this. Is there a headset that I could borrow until I get one? Do we have one at Noisebridge that is a loaner, or does anybody have a loaner?
If you need one, I've certainly got a Muse. That will, I mean, the nice thing being that that's also an EEG notebook compatible device.
Great. I've used the Muse before, so I'm fine with trying the Muse. Sure.
Sure. And that will give you an LSL stream.
Great.
So if anybody's interested in following up about the OHBM hackathon, please get in touch with me or John. And then just one last thing I wanted to cover before, so Paris was awesome, and Gene came and talked about OpenEIT and Spectra, and then Bastian from Open Humans joined, and talked about what they've been doing. And let me just share if I can. So, so how many people are? I mean, are people already familiar with Open Humans? There's not a lot of people on right now, but
it's new to me.
Cool. I mean,
Very basic.
so as I understand it, this is really coming out of kind of the quantified self community, and
Okay.
and again, I put a, let me get a link to so if you check the again, the meetup, I put a link to Open Humans paper. What was it? And the cool thing being that you have some people that I only knew from my binder. So I just put a link in for the paper that talks about their platform. And so, like it says, like a platform for participant-centered research and personal data exploration. And so what Open Humans allows you to do, I mean, you can see here some of the projects, but let me switch here. Yeah. So the what that means, and just so it's clear, this is Bastian Savaras is who came to speak with us, who's the director of research for Open Humans, and I believe Open SNP goes back, I think, almost 10 years now, where so I think it was one of the first projects. I could be wrong, but people are submitting their genetic tests, genetic sequencing data, and not necessarily making it public, or in this case they are. You can, the platform is allowing you to do various things with your data. So one, to help you analyze your own data, and potentially to be a part of a citizen science or research IRB university study. But in a really interesting way, in terms of you are always getting access to your own data, right? Like by submitting your data, that you are getting a dashboard and visualizations of that data, such that you can hopefully learn something from it, right? And as you can see, I mean, so the 23andMe and Ancestry DNA uploads, Night Scout is related to some diabetes work with, I believe, an open pancreas project. And so people are, I think, well, they're monitoring their blood levels and submitting data back. You get lots of Fitbit things, why they, yeah. So I mean, there's a couple of things that are awesome about this. So one, it's an open platform, right? So this is something that we could be using with what we're hoping to put together with Open BCI and potentially others, in terms of this could be a platform where we have a service already that people can upload their data, and they can, we can quite easily use some of the visualizations that we already have in EEG notebooks and or in MNE, and give people some visualizations of that data, as well as they can decide to make that available to the group. And he talked about their privacy issues, how they how they deal with authentication, how they deal, where's the data stored, how, whether projects need to have IRB or not, and mainly just how they try and inform people of what kind of project that they are kind of entering into. And the other great thing is that they've already created uploads and visualizations for a whole bunch of devices that we would want to have in conjunction with the EEG, right? So I've been joining their community call the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to say, and some of the people from NeurotechX Paris joined as well, and that is Tuesday at 10 a.m. And yeah, so Alex, go ahead.
I think Ryan is before I did.
Oh, yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, so seeing this quantified self stuff, I wanted to share one of the other quantified self like systems that I first met the founder of at a virtual reality and augmented reality hardware development event last summer. It's called Lightscope. It's mostly about people's online digital data, but talking with him quite a bit, I know that he wants to allow more things like sensors and stuff to be usable, and would probably definitely be interested in finding out how his software can incorporate data streams from stuff like what we want to use, or maybe even see if he can connect with the open humans people, because one thing I would love to see more of is people able to self-analyze their internet search patterns, their music listening experience, stuff like some of what Alex M's when I was at that doing DG and then trying to play games or read a book or watch videos online. I love trying to figure out what that data means, and big part of it is there's just so little data connecting people's habits and interests to actual data sciences. So yeah. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the authentication is it's OAuth 2. You can also use just a simple upload tool, in the sense that if you can get your device or data that you want to process saved out in some sort of file format, then you can definitely upload it. And again, it's check out their paper. Romain, who runs the Paris meetup, recorded recorded Bastian's talk and our conversation afterwards. So and again, join us 10, for those in San Francisco time zone, join us at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. on Tuesday for the community call. And Open Humans Slack, I saw just recently, I think John and Sebastian and some others are now on Open Humans. the kinds of things that we were talking about in terms of, you know, how can people share their, you know, how can we gather all the data? How can we provide a service? You know, they're running a Jupyter hub, and in this case, they've got, you know, you'll see on the paper, Tim Head is one of the co-authors on this paper. I only knew him as the MyBinder developer, and you know, so I was kind of hoping John Nolte was going to join us, but I mean, like we could. So let me just share again real quick. So yeah. So from this create, right? So, you know, you can hit the create button here, and as it says, like, want to work with Open Humans members, you can get started immediately. We could create a project, and well, let's see if I just use this. So, I mean, you know, like this could be, you know, this could be live, you know, this evening, in the sense that, like you said, like there's no, we can use, I think with like up to 20 users or members, we can get a project started, like, you know, today. And it would just be going through these particular questions, and it would be very easy, be very easy to create the uploads. I mean, you know, using a manual upload, we could already, you know, in a sense, be sharing data, or certainly moving it to AWS. So they use in the back end AWS S3 bucket, and again, it's like, you know, John was providing some of us some, you know, basically a Jupyter Hub instance previously, but, you know, it was something that he had to maintain. And, you know, Open Humans is a very well maintained, you know, great infrastructure, great backend. They've got tons of projects already going, and it really has, it has a huge huge head start on so many features that we already wanted. And, you know, the great thing being that one of the reasons that Bastian was so willing to join us at Hack Night on Monday was that he was already familiar with NeurotechX. And they previously talked about adding EEG functionality, but the main thing being was that they didn't feel like that was their area of expertise. And so anyway, I wanted to see if there was anybody else who was willing to, yeah, I mean, you know, so I know John's working with, you know, people at Open BCI about functionality and things. Like, I feel like we could actually get started with the people that we, you know, are already working on this, where, you know, we could create this project with, you know, limited, you know, it wouldn't be a IRB approved study at this point, but we could absolutely figure out how to get our data loaded in. You know, we wouldn't have to change file formats or anything. They've already got, you know, a CSV, you know, uploader and a JSON uploader. And yeah, like I'd love to see that. You know, again, I'm for those who aren't familiar with the background of this project, you know, this is something that we've talked about previously in terms of using EEG notebooks to collect data from open BCI headsets and try and open this up as a summer challenge where people would be contributing their data, right? And contributing their data from a set of pre-canned experiments in the sense of pre-canned, stimulations, and even better if we could, have that longitudinally, right? So how is their EEG changing with their, daily blood pressure, or, anything else, like how is their EEG changing with the number of steps that they're walking that day?
So Morgan,
yeah.
What's your sense for the how much we need to get started in terms of development time?
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of the initial non-IRB version, so if you will just say like the proof of concept, I think it would be like half a day. It would be filling out like how you'd exactly want me to fill out the forms that they ask in terms of creating the project. And some of that's just like what do you want our screens to display when people have chosen this project. Then the next part is the uploads. So we could literally integrate into their infrastructure. And so if we had someone familiar with Django, then that's how they currently are doing things. In terms of people integrating.
So there's a Python Django CMS basically as the backend.
Yeah.
So I'm like just still trying to grasp all of this because I'm new to a lot of what you're working on.
Sure.
But it sounds like, let's say we pick the projects we already have from the notebook set, and we want to then walk people through how to run these experiments and do these experiments. The data gets uploaded. We would set up an open humans project as the repository so that everyone could have access to our produced data.
Yep.
And that sounds great. So if there's some way to get involved in that, because the thing that I'm working on, the empathy test, ideally would be something like a beginner friendly, simple intro type deal also.
Yeah.
And just by seeing how you guys are doing these already built projects, I can learn like what makes a good EEG project, because that's what I'm trying to learn how to do. It's like how to even build one of these projects.
Sure.
So can I just sort of ride along and watch? Like when are you guys going to be working on this?
Sure. So you can, in the sense that what we can do is get you one of the muses, and then you can use EEG notebooks. So this is a particular NeurotechX project on our GitHub, and which is currently compatible with the Muse, and then there's 5 experiments, I believe, John, right? But so there's like a auditory oddball, or well, I would that's what you're particularly focused on, right, John?
Yeah, I have a project on that at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, just like super easy. It's one of the canonical ERP experiments, for sure, and I like it a bit more than the steady state Veep, because the Muse doesn't get a good occipital channel. But that particular project, once you've got the hardware, it's like plug in your Bluetooth dongle. You maybe have a little issue depending on your platform. What are you using, Alex?
Using for what?
What operating system?
Oh, I mostly use Windows.
Gotcha.
And I mean, I have a Mac, and
No,
I have the Linux machine, but I'm
no.
99% Windows because I do VR. And
Sure,
I
sure.
didn't leave Apple. Apple left me. Okay, that's my reason.
So the nice thing being that very easy to use on Windows, and so you just need BlueMuse, which is another open source project to just give you the communication with Muse, and yeah, it's all there on the EEG Notebooks website in terms of instructions, and that's definitely one of the supported. So check for the auditory oddball, and you should be able to just run through that, and you'll save out a CSV with the data, right? And then I could have created already this particular project. Like, you'll get visualizations in the Jupyter notebooks that come with the project, but it'll be super easy for you to upload that data too, which would be great, because I'd love to have more people as test users of this kind of group for this group project.
Great.
And again, like, what would make this even like a more important research project is getting more data. I mean, so that's the beautiful thing about quantified self, right? Is like measure often and measure often and record. And so hopefully we wouldn't just have EEG, but we would have what your exercise, what you're eating, what things you're doing that would be totally relevant to processing your EEG data longitudinally. So in a sense, that like, it's not only giving us like the IT infrastructure that we would want, but it's also already giving us a community of people that are collecting data from those other devices that we would want to include. So nice. Yeah, and the nice thing, I think, Alex, we talked a little bit about the beauty of LSL, lab streaming layer. Stop me, Jonathan, if I'm using acronyms. Lab streaming layer is this publish and subscribe model for sharing both data from devices, but also kind of like timing between devices. So that if I have, not saying like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch necessarily is the perfect example, but say I was getting my heart rate from my Apple Watch, and I wanted to merge that together with my EEG data, I would need to know like how to synchronize those two time series, right? And lab streaming layer is giving us a kind of best approximation that at least on a LAN system, a LAN infrastructure can give us something reliably to around a millisecond, which is perfect for.
I found a Unity integration, so I will make a Unity project, since that's what I'm using for this anyway. They can easily use it. So Jonathan was great.
So anyway, like, just wanted to say, like, that's something that we could definitely be moving, these, and the great thing being that like Bastian and Madball, who's the executive director there, who runs the community call, they seem really interested to help us too. Yeah, so please follow up. Well, I'll follow up, Alex, in terms of headsets and things. Yeah, we don't need to integrate with their Django, but there would be something, yeah. adding the visualizations and things is really just doing some Jupyter Notebook visualizations and setting those so you get access to the data in the sense from Jupyter Lab. Once it's
Jonathan's had his hand up.
Sorry?
Jonathan or John had his hand up.
Oh yeah.
So there was one just quick thing was because Morgan was mentioning the auditory oddball, it's there, but it's not in the documentation very well. So if you can't find it, just look harder or ask me. But the main thing is, so I would suggest basically, I think it's coming pretty quick, but I think we're kind of in agreement that we should just kind of give this a crack, right?
Yeah.
At least it looks like the initial commitment is pretty minimal. So I just wanted to say, like, you know, anyone on the call, I speak personally, like, given that, you know, if it's half a day playing around, going through it, like, it's entirely possible I'll, you know, procrastinate and do that sometime next month, or not necessarily then, but soon. And I expect it might be similar for everyone else as well. So just saying, like, if anyone finds themselves, you know, browsing around this, just, you know, shoot some messages and say, hey, I looked into this. This is what it looks like to me. Or if you want to go ahead and like just create the project, you know, maybe send some messages through to just kind of check with everyone if there's anything uncertain about the setup. But anyone who wants to like take the lead on getting this set up, you know, knock yourself out. Otherwise, it's entirely likely that myself or Morgan will probably get around to this sometime in the next 1 to 2 months, I would guess, if it's 1 to X months, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely volunteer to at least create the project, you know, with the knowledge that that Bastian can just delete it and let us start again, or you know, like there's really no downsides. You know, I want to get a little bit further to just get out what the potential questions would be or what I would love to get feedback on. But I'd be really happy to move forward with that. So yeah,
that's great. That might I did drop it in the Open BCI Challenge channel on the Slack as well.
Yes.
And you know, it's kind of a bit short notice, but we might be able to squeeze those two things together.
Yeah.
If it looks like it's a suitable you know, medium for the data upload component, then maybe that is the best way to run this challenge.
I mean, I think, you know, so I'll definitely, you know, so sorry for not everybody being up to, you know, with the conversation, but, you know, one of the Open BCI questions was like, do we need to, what the very important question of like, what do we need to do for data privacy and what do we need to do for governance? And, you know, and they haven't been able to join the Open Humans call, but I can tell you that these guys have a lot of experience and a lot of existing projects that they can point to. And some of those projects are IRB approved and some of them aren't. And they talk about how they manage those differently. And, you know, I think there's nothing but benefits of working with them. So I'll definitely follow up on that, John. And
Thanks,
yeah, so speaking of, I know John is, well, I think the Jonathans are, you're East Coast too, right, John? Yeah. So it's midnight on the East Coast. And so I want to give, and my daughter needs dessert, as John has also said. Okay. I only feed her ice cream, as you said, John. So great. I'm gonna let, yeah, if anybody wants to stay on, please. I gotta go. But thanks again, and thank you as always to Ryan and Alex for our videographers. And Alex, just one other, Ryan has uploaded some videos, and I don't know if they've been edited and made public. Yeah, thanks. So